Have you ever wondered why some women choose to engage in deeply intimate acts with their partners, like oral sex, and what it truly signifies about their relationship? Is it simply about pleasure, or does it reveal something far more profound? Today we're going to dive into something far deeper than just the physical act itself. We'll explore how intimacy, especially in long-term relationships, is not just about the physical connection, but the emotional bonds that tie us together. By the end of this video, you'll learn three things: how to build a lasting emotional connection, the biggest mistake most men unknowingly make in their relationships, and simple yet powerful actions you can take to reignite the intimacy in your life. Now, I know it might sound strange or even uncomfortable at first, but think about it for a moment. Have you ever felt disconnected from someone you loved just because you stopped doing the little things? The things that used to make them feel seen, heard, and cherished? Maybe you've been there, where everything felt right at the beginning, but as time went on, something slowly shifted. You started to feel a little more like roommates than lovers. It's a feeling I think most of us have experienced, whether we realize it or not. So let's start with this. How much do you truly know about the emotional needs of your partner? And more importantly, how often do you show them that they're valued? Not just through big gestures, but through the little everyday actions. Let's explore these questions, and maybe, just maybe, you'll start to see your relationship in a whole new light. Intimacy isn't just about physical acts. It's about something deeper, something more profound that goes beyond what we can touch or see. I want you to think for a moment. When you feel truly close to someone, is it always about the physical? Or is there something more that makes you feel connected to them, something that goes straight to your heart? Let me give you a little example. Picture this. You're sitting at your favorite coffee shop on a rainy afternoon, just enjoying a quiet moment with your partner. You're not doing anything extraordinary, no fancy dinner or big celebration. But as you sit there sipping your coffee, you look over at them and notice the way they smile when they hear a joke you told, or how they subtly adjust their posture when they feel comfortable next to you. It's in these small moments, isn't it? That's where the magic of intimacy lies. Not in the grand gestures, but in the everyday, almost invisible things. I had a friend, Mark, who used to think intimacy was just about the physical side of things. He always assumed that as long as he was providing and taking care of everything, his relationship would be just fine. But one day he came home from work to find his wife, Lisa, sitting on the couch looking out the window, a little distant. They had been married for years, but something wasn't quite right. They hadn't had a real conversation in weeks. No deep talks, no, "How are you, really?" Just day-to-day stuff. He tried to break the silence with a hug, but she pulled away. It wasn't because she didn't love him, but because she didn't feel seen, heard, or emotionally safe anymore. And without that emotional connection, intimacy became harder to feel. It's easy to forget that emotional safety is the foundation of intimacy. It's about how we make our partner feel emotionally secure. If someone feels like they matter, if they feel heard, appreciated, and understood, then intimacy follows naturally. It's not about performing or trying to impress. It's about showing up for each other emotionally, day after day. But here's the thing. Emotional disconnection doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually, little by little, without us even realizing. And once it happens, no matter how attractive or successful we are, the desire to connect physically starts to fade too. So think about it. Are you showing up emotionally for your partner in the small ways every day? Let's dive a little deeper into how this emotional connection can slip away without us even noticing, and what we can do to bring it back. I think we've all been there, right? You're in a relationship, everything is going well, and you feel like you're doing all the right things. You're providing, you're showing up, and everything seems to be working out. But one day you realize something's missing. You don't feel as close to your partner as you once did, and they don't either. There's this invisible gap that wasn't there before, and it can be really frustrating to try and figure out what went wrong. Here's the thing most men don't realize. The biggest mistake we make in relationships is assuming that once things are set, once we're comfortable, settled into a routine, our job is done. We think the love we built at the beginning is strong enough to carry the relationship without much more effort, and that's where the mistake lies. Take my friend Joe, for example. He's been married for over 15 years. When he first met his wife, he did everything he could to make her feel special. He planned little surprises, sent flowers, and they would spend hours just talking about everything and nothing. But after a few years, things started to slow down. Work became more demanding, life got busier, and Joe found himself coming home late, tired, and thinking about the million things he had to get done. At first, his wife understood, but over time, she started to feel like she was on the back burner. Joe's attention, once so abundant, became scattered and distant. One evening, after a long day, Joe came home and plopped down on the couch, exhausted. His wife, Rachel, was sitting in the kitchen, staring at her phone. He tried to start a conversation, but it felt like pulling teeth. "What's wrong?" he asked, frustrated. She didn't answer right away, then finally said, "I feel like I'm just here, not really a part of your life anymore." Joe was shocked. He didn't get it. He worked hard for them, didn't he? But that's the thing. He had forgotten to do the little things, the small gestures that say, "I see you, I appreciate you, and I still choose you every day." He had fallen into the trap that so many of us do, thinking that love would just take care of itself. This doesn't mean that providing for your family or working hard isn't important. It absolutely is. But emotional connection doesn't come from checking off tasks. It comes from showing up emotionally every single day. The mistake Joe made was assuming that the emotional connection they built in the beginning would last without continued effort. This happens in so many relationships. We get busy with life, we stop making our partner feel special, and we forget that intimacy, emotional intimacy especially, isn't something that just happens. It's something we actively nurture, even in the small, mundane moments. So how do we fix this? How do we avoid making the same mistake and reconnect emotionally with our partners? Let's dive into that next, and I'll share some easy steps you can start taking today to get back on track. Let's talk about something simple, yet incredibly powerful: the small, everyday actions that can help restore intimacy and emotional connection in a relationship. Because here's the thing, we often think of intimacy as something that has to be dramatic or profound, like a romantic getaway or a grand gesture. But in reality, it's the quiet little things we do every day that matter most. Let me tell you a story. I have this friend, Sarah, who's been with her partner, Tom, for nearly 5 years. At one point, their relationship started to feel distant. They were both so busy with work and life that they barely had time to talk. Sarah felt like she was losing touch with Tom, and even though they lived under the same roof, there were days when it felt like they were strangers. One evening after a particularly long day, Sarah decided to make a change. She didn't plan anything big, no surprise gifts or fancy dinner, but she did something simple. She made Tom's favorite coffee, the one he always raves about, and left it on the kitchen counter for him to find. When he walked in, she smiled and said, "I remembered how much you love this." It wasn't much, but it was enough to bring him out of his work mode. They sat down together, had coffee, and really talked about their day. That evening, for the first time in weeks, they felt connected again. It's the small, intentional acts like this that can bring you closer to your partner. They might seem insignificant on their own, but when they add up over time, they create a deeper emotional bond. And the best part is, they don't take much effort. Think about this. How often do you make time for those small moments? Maybe it's remembering to ask your partner how their day went, or giving them a hug just because. Or maybe it's something as simple as noticing when they're feeling down and taking a moment to just listen. These actions are what build trust, appreciation, and intimacy over time. But here's the catch. It's easy to fall into a routine where we stop doing these small things. We get busy, we assume our partner knows we care, and we forget that emotional intimacy requires effort. Just like you would water a plant to keep it alive, you have to water your relationship with these little moments of affection, appreciation, and emotional connection. One of the simplest actions to reignite intimacy is to make sure you're emotionally present. This means really listening when your partner talks, not just hearing their words, but understanding their feelings. It's easy to get distracted, whether it's by work, our phones, or just the daily grind. But when we don't fully engage, it creates an emotional distance, even if we don't realize it. I'm not saying you have to be perfect at it all the time. I know life gets in the way. But the key is consistency. It's the little daily deposits that add up to something big. Small touches like holding hands while watching a movie or leaving a sweet note in their bag can make a world of difference. These actions say, I'm thinking of you, I care about you, and I choose to be with you. Now let's pause for a moment and think about your own relationship. Are you taking the time for these little acts of emotional connection? And if you are, how can you make those moments even more meaningful? Next, we'll dive into some very specific, easy-to-implement habits that can transform the way your partner sees you. We'll look at how to create emotional safety and trust so your partner feels truly seen and loved. But before we do that, let's reflect on what's been missing in your own connection and how we can start rebuilding it step by step. Sometimes the smallest changes can create the biggest shifts in a relationship. It's funny how we often think we need to make huge, dramatic gestures to fix things, to reconnect, or to bring back the spark. But in reality, it's the little, consistent acts of kindness, attention, and care that can really transform the way we feel about each other. Take my friend Tom, for example. He's a guy who's always been there for his wife, Sarah. But there was a time when things just didn't feel right between them. They had been together for over 10 years, but slowly over time, they started to feel more like roommates than romantic partners. It wasn't that they didn't love each other anymore, but the connection wasn't what it used to be. The passion had faded, the late-night talks had stopped, and even though they lived in the same house, they weren't emotionally present for each other the way they once were. One evening, after another quiet dinner where they barely spoke, Tom had a moment of clarity. He realized that it wasn't the big things that had changed, it was the small things that had been missing. The little gestures that once made Sarah feel cherished and valued, like him surprising her with a cup of tea in the morning or texting her during the day just to say, I'm thinking of you, had gradually disappeared. And without those small moments, the emotional connection had started to slip away. So Tom decided to try something small, something simple. He started paying attention again. He didn't plan anything big or fancy, but he made a conscious effort to make her feel special in the little ways. Every morning, he would make Sarah's favorite coffee and leave it by the kitchen sink. Instead of waiting for the weekend to have a date night, he'd plan little surprise moments during the week, like lighting a candle while they ate dinner or leaving a note on her pillow. And most importantly, he started listening again, really listening, not just with his ears, but with his heart. It didn't take long for things to shift. Sarah started smiling more. Her eyes lit up when he walked into the room, and they began to talk again, not just about the practical stuff, but about how they were feeling. Those small changes, small intentional acts, started to rekindle the emotional connection they had lost. Here's the lesson I want you to take away from this. When we focus on the small things, the things that are easy to overlook or take for granted, that's when the magic happens. It's the daily, consistent effort to show up for each other in the little moments that build trust, closeness, and intimacy. You don't need grand gestures to create a deep connection. What matters is your presence, your attention, and the care you show day after day. Now, I know it's easy to feel like it's too late for these small changes to make a difference. But trust me, if you start now, even with the smallest of efforts, you'll begin to see a change. You don't need to overhaul your entire relationship. You just need to start with one small thing. So what little change can you make today that will show your partner they matter? Maybe it's something as simple as asking them how their day was, or leaving them a message that says, I'm thinking about you. Small steps lead to big results, and before you know it, you'll have transformed the way you connect. And speaking of small steps, let's dive into the next part of our journey. How these small changes can create emotional safety, a feeling that is absolutely essential for intimacy to thrive. When we think about long-lasting intimacy, we often picture grand romantic gestures like surprise vacations or fancy gifts. But in reality, the secret to deep, lasting intimacy is far simpler. and it's rooted in the way we show up for each other every single day. Let me share a story with you. A couple I know, Emma and Jake, have been together for over 20 years. Their relationship has seen its ups and downs, like any relationship. But what's remarkable about them is how they've managed to maintain their closeness and emotional connection over the years. They're not perfect, but they've learned the key to keeping their bond strong: consistency and understanding. I remember chatting with Emma one day about their relationship, and she said something that really stuck with me. She said, "Jake and I don't just love each other in the big moments. We love each other in the small, ordinary moments. The times when we're not trying to impress each other or make things exciting. It's in the way he asks me how my day went, or how he always remembers to grab my favorite coffee when he's out. It's not the big gestures, it's the daily quiet moments that make me feel loved." This is the secret to long-lasting intimacy. It's built on the foundation of consistent, everyday actions that make both partners feel seen, heard, and valued. It's about showing up, not just when things are easy, but especially when things are tough, and continuing to choose each other every day. What Emma and Jake understand, and what many of us forget, is that true intimacy is not about perfection or keeping the flame alive with huge moments of romance. It's about the quiet understanding that says, "I choose you today just like I did yesterday." That sense of security and emotional safety is what allows intimacy to flourish and last. So here's the insight I want you to think about. How are you showing up for your partner today? Are you giving them small, everyday moments of affection and understanding? Because those are the moments that truly create a bond that lasts, not the big, flashy acts we often focus on. And speaking of choosing each other every day, let's move on to our next step: how these small, consistent actions help build emotional safety, and why that's the key to reigniting and maintaining intimacy in the long run. So here we are. After everything we've talked about today, I want you to take a moment and think about this. What if the key to deeper intimacy, the kind that lasts, isn't hidden in the big moments, but in the small, everyday actions that we often overlook? What if those little gestures, like a kind word, a shared laugh, or even just being there when your partner needs you, are the very things that can make your connection stronger than ever? I think about a couple I know, Sarah and Mike. They've been through their share of struggles, but what's amazing is how they've never stopped choosing each other, day in and day out. They've learned that love isn't about the perfect dates or the grand gestures. It's in the quiet moments, like holding hands while watching TV or making each other's coffee in the morning. These moments add up over time, creating a bond that's so much stronger than any momentary spark. Now, I want you to ask yourself, what small thing can you do today to show your partner they matter? It doesn't have to be anything grand. Start with one small change and watch how it can shift everything. If you start making these little efforts, you'll see the change. And next time we talk, we'll dive into how emotional safety plays a huge role in intimacy. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.